Okay, so welcome back, everybody. So we have our first keynote presentation, which is being given by Dr. Thomas Lancaster. Thomas really does not need an introduction. I think everybody in the academic integrity world knows, has quoted and cited Thomas multiple times. But we're still going to do a little bit of a formality and go ahead and do the introduction for him. Dr. Thomas has researched the issues surrounding academic integrity since 2000. He currently teaches at Imperial College London in the UK, and he regularly speaks at international academic integrity events. He is best known, of course, for the research into contract cheating, a term he developed with now retired, and we are very sorry that we have lost Robert this year, who worked with Thomas in coming up with the term contract cheating, a lot of the backgrounds research that went into that, to describe the phenomenon where students utilize third parties to complete their academic work for them. Today, Thomas is going to give us a talk on academic integrity 2020 plus minus 20. Effectively, he's going to look at what it takes for academic integrity to be to the heart of educational systems. In this opening keynote presentation, Dr. Thomas will review his personal journey as an academic integrity researcher and practitioner, and he's going to speculate on challenges the academic community will face in the future. I think that's going to be a wonderful presentation to hear, including the threats posed by developing technology and artificial intelligence. So without further ado, I'm going to begin the presentation.
Everyone, welcome to this keynote presentation for plagiarism across Europe and beyond 2020. I'm Thomas Lancaster, and I want to discuss academic integrity as it's applying to the world today, and looking back primarily across the period of my career, which has seen 20 years researching this field. There will probably be another 20 years before I'm in a position to retire, if such a thing ever happens to academics. But I know this is my productive time of my life for research. And before I start, thanks very much to Zena for arranging this fantastic conference, getting everything working online in such a short space of time, and for inviting me to speak to you all there. The theme of the conference is integrity in education for future happiness. I hope everyone is as excited as I am to be involved in this field and sharing our experience with students, really helping the next generation of people to progress. In this talk, I really want to focus on my own personal journey of discovery and how we've got to where we are today, thinking about academic integrity, where the good practices come from, and how my thoughts and my view have changed over that time period. There's a lot of very good work going on. There's a lot more we can build upon. It often surprises people to know that I am a computer scientist, so I do have a technical background, although much of my work today is on the softer side of computer science. But that's really informed my worldview of academic integrity there. And if you do want to connect with me, then my Twitter handle at Dr. Lancaster, do use a conference hashtag. I believe it's #PAEB2020. The slides are on my SlideShare account as well. But I'm really going to follow my own personal journey between 2000 and 2040, perhaps beyond, looking at the time period when I started my PhD. To 2003, completed that, London South Bank University, working on the technical side, a series of career moves after that point, but much of it focusing in on contract cheating. We had the big, let's say the big reveal in 2006. We're now in a situation where we're at with COVID-19 in 2020 and all the changes from that point. And then we move on to the other AI, or perhaps as I would say as a computer scientist, the main AI, artificial intelligence, likely to be our biggest challenge in the next 20 years. Not our only challenge, but one of the biggest ones we have to think about. But if I think back to when I started my PhD in the UK, we were very much focused on the technical challenge of plagiarism. We're looking at the tools to help detect if you thought about that's a UK view, look at perhaps more of the North American view, the US view, focused very much on honor codes. And we have these two different viewpoints that were there in 2000, and they possibly haven't changed all that much even to today. But before I go any further, I really want to speak about my friend and colleague in the contract cheating world, Robert Clark, who many of you will know passed away just over a month ago. Very sudden, came as a great shock. There is a tribute to him on Times Higher Education's website and in the printed magazine. But there would be no research in contract cheating without Bob Clark, who during the years from about 2004 onwards until he just couldn't keep working in this field, collected over 50,000 examples of student requests for contract cheating, did a huge amount of detective work, notified academics, tutors all around the world that contract cheating was going on, got told many times this doesn't happen, students don't do this. I got told once this guy is a crank, literally by someone in an email, not believing that these breaches of academic integrity could occur. But there are so many unsung heroes of academic integrity who have done all this work for many, many years. And during this talk, I want us to really make sure that we remember people like Bob for the huge amount of work he did with really no want of recognition. And I will share several examples of Bob's research as we go through, but also all the other people who've paved the way, the people who have been working in this field for a long time. A lot of people have joined the field in the last few years, and it's absolutely brilliant. You're doing this great work, but let's not forget everything that's been done to lead up to this point. And I think I will show you as we go through that many of the same lessons are so valid, or this term, what's old is new again. Every time someone gets a new idea, it may not be so new, it may already have been in existence. And I think I'll just tell you a little story of mine. One of my favorite quotes from a book, Great Gatsby: can't repeat the past. Why? Of course you can. I'm rare as a computer scientist, studied English literature. This was a text we studied for GCSE, which is sort of the 14 to 16-year-old syllabus. I took English literature further than that, but I was always a diligent student. May not surprise those of you who know me, but one day I just completely forgot to read a chapter of The Great Gatsby, which surprises me looking back, because normally I would have read the whole book. Went in, took the test set by my teacher and failed because I hadn't read the book. And at the end of the test, my teacher, Mr. Kidney, told us we should do what he does. We don't need to read the book, we can just read the summarized version, the York Notes. And this was the book he had, this was the book that I went and bought. And he was getting the questions from reading the one-page summary rather than a whole chapter. That, of course, I never failed another test. If I remember, I did read everything, but it was great having the summary there as a backup. Now, is this cheating if it's doing what your teacher tells you to do, or is it a fair advantage? It's a kind of nuanced discussion we have to be having with students, but really academic integrity is the responsibility of everyone. There. All right, so let's go back to my journey. So 2000, I arrived very early January, moved from a, let's say, prestigious university to a more mass market university. A little bit of a culture shock to the system, but I stayed in that sector for most of my career. I think it's helping people, taught a lot, started my PhD. PhD, of course, nowadays. This was the very first paper I published back in 2000 with Fintan Colwyn, my PhD supervisor, looking at the kind of technology available to detect plagiarism. Then the content, of course, is slightly outdated there, but you'll see plagiarism.org mentioned, which of course now is $1 billion plus company known as Turnitin. But what strikes me about this, in the days when students had just started copying from the web, were the words plagiarism itself is not a new concern. Even then I was conscious that people have been plagiarizing for centuries. Playwrights plagiarized plots of plays there. And we can date back much further and say this is a problem that's far from new. In the Keynote, and I taught students, I got used to work as a research assistant, helped to organize a conference, many things, got through my PhD, did the Viva. By the end of my PhD, I really moved into the area of human-computer interaction. How do we help people to use computers more effectively? And so my focus was looking at plagiarism detection technology, or originality checking technology, we probably say now, and saying how can we help people to understand the reports and see why the results are as they are. There's a whole comparable area now called explainable AI. This is the example of the tool I developed, showing a real student project where the darker areas show sections of the project that were copied from different sources. Essentially, in this case, several whole chapters copied and some shorter areas and fragments reworded or patchwork together. Now, this is still a huge problem we need to look at because we still know about people who don't know how to interpret originality reports, or who think they need a number or to get their plagiarism score, so to speak, below a certain percentage. Something we need to keep training staff and students on so that they're getting the benefit of knowing how to use this technology to help to improve as an academic writer. Yeah. At that point, I moved on, University of Central England, Birmingham City University, spent many years of my career there, published some papers based on my PhD, hadn't got around to publishing, but met Bob Clark. We both knew that contract cheating existed from different routes. We both found our work online. I'd, of course, come across this idea during my PhD in different formats, knowing this was going to be the next challenge for academic integrity. And we started work on contract cheating. Bob collected a lot of data. We published some of it. We didn't publish anywhere near enough of the work we did. So much of that I've started to go back through many of Bob's files that just got lost alongside the rigors of teaching a heavy schedule there. We published our first paper in 2006 on contract cheating, got a lot of media attention. This, I think, was one of the first pieces we had in Australia, The Age in Melbourne, which talked about our work, but it had contributions from very prominent academic integrity researchers, most notably Wendy Sutherland Smith, another researcher who doesn't get the recognition she deserves, with Wendy very much saying that if students are contract cheating, they are getting original work produced, then how can universities solve this there? What are the solutions? They're getting original, new commissioned work. Well, thankfully, we have made progress in detection since that point, but it was a scary prospect. It's taken a long time to do so. Contract cheating firms, of course, are still advertising and visible to the current day. This is a kind of example of a fake news article that you see all the time, where students are being told don't plagiarize, but of course you're not plagiarizing if you buy a plagiarism-free paper from a reputable platform like the one I've blocked out, because this is a multi-million-dollar industry and the firms want to make sure they continue to get their cut from that industry. In 2008, we were very keen to share good practice, and we pulled together, alongside what's now the Higher Education Academy, the first one-day workshop on contract cheating with some prominent names, some of them you probably still recognize, looking at the kind of issues that universities needed to address there. We had people like Will Murray, later from Turnitin, looking at the risk. What is the risk to students and to universities of contract cheating? Fintan Colwyn, you may recognize as my PhD supervisor there, working on stylometrics. How do we tell if students have written the work themselves? Look at the visualizations. We looked at procedures. Bob and I gave the keynote. We looked at final year capstone projects, the important part of the course, and Tony Jenkins looking at the quality of work through contract cheating and how much did it cost. Really trying to get that information out there. Many of the same themes we still see today there. And before this keynote, I wanted to look and see how much research is being officially published. These are the number of papers, according to Google Scholar, that have been published with the term contract cheating in the title of the paper, excluding patents and citations. The 2020 numbers only go up to early April, so they're quite low, but you may see that in 2019, huge number, more than doubling the previous years, almost the same number as between 2006 and 2018 combined. 2006 was our first paper eliminating necessity plagiarism. There's been a real ballooning of people thinking this is an area of work to get into, which is great to see, but not quite there yet this year, but we'll see where this one goes. I also did a similar study for the term academic integrity, and I guess you can see a bit more of a linear increase here, starting from very low numbers. The numbers, of course, go back before 2000, but single digits, up to as much as 151 papers with academic integrity in the title in 2018. Now, of course, this is not every paper on areas related to academic integrity. People do use different terms, but we've really moved away from thinking about academic dishonesty, academic misconduct, towards academic integrity, and we are getting that research out there, but we have to make sure this research is getting known about and is useful. Initiatives. I could talk a lot about 14 years of work, which keeps going on to this day, but I'm sure many of you have heard me talk about contract cheating before. Look at where we are, suddenly emerged, why I'm doing this keynote remotely, which is a very different experience to reacting to everyone, talking to everyone, and seeing what you're interested in. And I'll briefly pick up on an area that I suspect will come up over and over again at this conference, but to my fault, I found myself saying these words: we need a scandal to get people to take academic integrity and contract cheating seriously. And that's all based around Australia, which really had to act in this area because of the My Master scandal, where journalists hacked into a contract cheating service and they got access to the bank records of that service, the order details of that service. They found out the work that was being requested, and somebody is probably screaming at their screen right now. It wasn't hacked, but I guess my computer scientist view might say, well, this is not hacking there, but it's still kind of breach of how customers of that particular site would expect things to react. Well, I guess we have our scandal now all the way around the world in the form of COVID-19, and we have our scandal that the contract cheating industry has already jumped upon with these kind of adverts, these kind of disclaimers. These are just a few examples for you there. So things like stay safe at home there. Things like we are fully operational with our team and academics working safely. We've reduced the price per page to help students save money to buy essentials there. And we need to work out how to react to this. There's a lot of very quick changes being put into place in the educational system. And are they all doing what we want them to? There have been some great people who published blog posts, given webinars on this, which you can refer to. But one thing we really have to do is to think about our students as our partners, to trust our students and to work with them there. So I've done a lot of work with student academic partner schemes at other universities. I've got some partnerships with students planning to run this summer, probably remotely, investigating, promoting academic integrity. But what do the students want? How can we help them? How far can we trust them to do the right thing? How far do we have to enforce this upon them there? And now we look forward at the next 20 years. What will the future bring us in this new post-COVID-19 world? Well, we may see text being generated. I actually on my undergraduate project, before all this started, as a computer scientist, a few years before my PhD, on how do we generate text in the style of an author using Markov chains. We've got much more sophisticated techniques out there now. We had the OpenAI company thought their text was so convincing they weren't willing to release it. They have since released the code for this, and I'm sure there are people now working with this to generate even more convincing text, or perhaps applying this particular fields. So you could get an essay mill to generate something that has never even been near a writer at all there. They call it deep fakes for text. Deep fakes being where they're very convincing representations of humans being generated, or you can make, let's say, you could make Donald Trump say something stupid. That something I mentioned in a keynote way back in 2016 in Australia about robot SASSs. They've been found to be just as good as human teachers. And these are used quite widely already in some countries. It can be used to assess admissions essays, find out how good the writing style is, find out how much content is being covered. They can be used to assess job applications there. But in fact, these were already existing back when I did my PhD. It's what's old is new again. There are similar services for automatically marking work back in existence in 2003. But what would happen when a contract cheating provider gets access to this technology? Can they tell a student what mark they're going to get? Can they charge more for this service? And you can bet there are companies out there thinking about all these possibilities and what they can do. Here's an example from the Robert Clark archive of the type of thing he saw, I guess, more than 10 years ago on the now defunct site Rent-A-Coda. An online quiz, a student trying to hire somebody to be there ready to take the quiz at the exact time they would be. In these days, everything online, you need to be particularly wary that these services are out there. They're much more prominent than they were in 2007. It's a problem in over the last couple of years. The Independent Commissioner of Assessment Malpractice in the UK, looking at areas like how do people get hold of exam papers and release the questions through social media in advance with all the security and the physical security or the cyber security that's meant to be there to protect them. And again, new, this is an example from Bob's dating back to over 10 years ago again, the case of the blown paper, as he called this. I've left his original text from many of his talks here, where a student got hold of an exam from an international partner of a UK university that posted this on Rent-A-Coda. Luckily, Detective Bob spotted this and was able to alert the staff in the UK, and they changed the case study for the open book exam. The student had prepared based on the international version. They used the wrong notes, and they were found guilty through an academic integrity panel and excluded from the course. But security only works if it's consistent everywhere. And in these days, I know of people setting exams where students can take them in their own time zone. These questions are going to soon get calculated from student to student. Physical security, an issue. Here's a story I love based around that student trying to crawl through an air duct to retrieve an exam paper before the exam, and they got stuck and they got caught. But how often do we leave exam papers lying around on printers or on desks where they're unattended at university level? What's the physical security like? Can students hack into online systems? What's the cyber security like? We have very talented students who take as a badge of honor to be able to hack systems even today. There. And we need to discuss with students what kind of work they take alongside their courses. This is an advert on a freelancing site. A few years ago now, it ties in a lot of my research ongoing to this day, looking at who the writers are, who are hired to work for contract cheating companies. But here is an example, not the flashiest advert, but it does the job. They're trying to hire people to do technical writing, electrical, electronics, programming, law, medical, management, etc. And earn while studying, earn while you learn, work from home, all these appealing opportunities for students. Students are still being targeted by contract cheating firms all the time. Have the discussion with them that it's not the right thing for them to do. And I have to share this example with you, that our students are at risk of extortion and blackmail. There's a really interesting talk, I think, coming up later today on this, many other talks on contract cheating. Students have given me permission to share this. There's a lot more information than I can give in this talk, but a student who used a contract cheating firm was then essentially asked for more money, told they had to buy the copyright of the work that the firm had provided for them. Lots of WhatsApp discussions, at which point the firm sent the student this official letter from the UK Department for Education saying that they'd been asked to turn over details of all their customers, signed by the Minister of State. Now, of course, I can say that this is not an official letter. It looks quite convincing. If you look at it closely, there are mistakes in there. The address the firm gave is fake. In fact, they gave these students many fake addresses, or at least addresses that could have been used by writers but weren't theirs. But they gave enough detail for the student to be quite convinced and thought this was a real thing that the UK government would request. And so these contract cheating services that are now extorting and blackmailing students are going to some quite elaborate lengths to convince them. And we need to have that discussion with students. They're really putting themselves at risk. Yeah, we need to act. There are all kinds of things we can do. Here are just a few opportunities and challenges for you to dwell on. I think the 2020 situation where we are now is a great opportunity to improve academic integrity, but we also need to improve our research. There's been a lot of excellent research already done over the past 20 years, and many more years beyond that. We can build upon that. We can look at the methods that have been used. We can look at what's still valid. And some people may have heard me have a bit of I suppose, a rant really at the ICARE conference earlier this year. We can do research that goes beyond surveys and just asking students, what do you do? Do you cheat? Do we assume students will always answer completely honestly for that? But we have to continue with this work because we are competing with an industry that is making millions of dollars every year from this. We need to get academic integrity valued at a strategic level within universities and buy-in from all our staff and all our students there. And as I mentioned, we need to remember the researchers who have paved the way. There are many excellent things going on. I talked earlier on about the workshop we held soon after we first started talking about contract cheating. There are different ways of getting this information out there other than academic papers that we know people just don't pay attention to. I do a lot of media work. I blog, many other people do. We've got people like Sarah Eaton talking about COVID-19. We have students now involved producing documentaries. We have work with people like Zenith, holding panels, discussing contract cheating, getting students involved there. We have people creating, like Phil Dawson, creating great infographics and really helping to take these findings through social media to a mass audience there. And I think the academic paper is just a small part of the much bigger problem we need to tackle there. So, are we happy? I'm happy we're moving in the right direction. I'm happy that I've worked in a field where I think I can make a difference, where people do read my research. Hopefully you're happy as well. We're all getting used to working in a different modality, but we will get there. But most importantly, are our future students going to be happy? Well, I think I'll leave you with a final example from Detective Bob here. I don't think he ever shared this one, but Bob would track down students based on the aliases they used, in other words, the username. Here is one he shared with a US university based on that student having sold their car. That was enough for the university to find the student guilty, to exclude them for one semester. Contract cheating wasn't considered an expellable offence, but also to get the student to do community service. Now, that's apparently quite a common outcome in the United States. It's not one I know about in the US, but Bob has always had this vision of students doing community service, possibly dressed in official uniform, picking up litter. And it does make me chuckle when I think of Bob and all the pins he put in the map, that maybe there are different ways we can address the outcomes from contract cheating, and maybe the students giving back in some format is a great way forward, where all our students go on and benefit. So many thanks for joining me for this keynote. Have a great conference. You can access the slides online. Do tweet to me at Dr. Lancaster, and thanks for watching.
Okay, so with that, we come to the end of our first keynote. I would open the floor for any questions. So if you can raise your hand, and or you can just put a question on the chat. So Debbie says the clap hands reaction, so maybe we can just do it physically. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas, for that amazing keynote.